Hi everybody, it's Kat B here. It's lovely to see you today. Today I am with the lovely Marie Sulda. We're coming to you not transatlantic today, we're coming to you from different hemispheres. We've got the North Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, which is incredible because Marie is in Australia. I met Marie at the very early start of my journey as I started working with Helping Parents Heal. Marie is one of our affiliate leaders. She was an affiliate leader alongside me, and she happened to see a group reading that I was hosting. Marie, tell everybody about yourself. Tell everybody why you're here and how we met, my darling, and the inspired connections that we've got.
Sure. So I think really Sienna, my daughter, brought us together. She passed away when she was 11 of a AVM in her brain. And I think I really quickly found HPH after that because I knew that she had physically gone, but I also knew that she was still there. And I just was really trying to find a way of connecting. So any tools I could get. I was so open to reading every book, understanding any way that I could to keep that connection and love alive.
Am I right in saying, Maria, that you actually were quite spiritually open before the event of Sienna transitioning? You
Yeah.
you had an
Yeah.
interest.
So I was quite interested in near death experiences, and what happened to Sienna was so sudden and didn't have any lead up to it. We didn't know that that was in her brain and that could happen. She was, fine. 2 weeks prior, we were walking on the beach and she did say to me, Mum, what do you think happens when you die? And I had watched some near-death experiences and I had a bit of spiritual background. And I said, from what I can gather, our consciousness, continues on after. And we go potentially to a light, we might have a bit of a life review. And I looked at her and I said, but you won't have to worry if you have to do that. I said, because it's all those beautiful things that you do, you get to see the ripples of that. And I said, so like every time that you're speaking to someone on the beach and you're saying, I love your jumper, or she used to say things like that, I said, you'll get to see how they felt, how they went back to their family, all that sort of stuff. And she liked that idea. She was smiling about that. And she said to me, Mum, I think that if I die, I want it to be really quick. And I said, well, we don't have any choice of that at the time. I thought that. And I said, you're going to be a grandma anyway. But she just kind of looked at me. She kind of, in hindsight, I kind of felt that she was just prepping. And she just said to me, if that happens, I would also, I would donate my organs. Like she said that to me. So I thought to myself, well, that was interesting. But I thought, it was COVID. COVID had just started and we were just out on our, in Australia, we were locked down. So we had only like an hour. We were allowed to go out and walk every day. So we're on that walk together. And I thought maybe it's coming from that. But anyway, 2 weeks after that, they were allowed to go back to school. And on the day it happened, in hindsight, like we came back to her bedroom after, 4 days in the hospital, and we saw that on her calendar, she loved dragons. When she was little, I used to say, what do you want to be when you grow up? You can be anything you want to be. And she'd be like, can I be a dragon? Anyway, she had a calendar in her room that I'd bought her earlier that year, and she'd crossed off every day except for the day that she passed away. And the 3 days she was in hospital, she'd drawn this dragon flying off.
Oh, wow. Do you know what's giving me
Yeah.
goosebumps, Maria? Is we saw each other in
Yeah.
London in January. And it was the first time we'd maybe seen each other for a couple of years, actually. And I found it really interesting because I knew straight away, as soon as you made contact, it was Sienna saying, I want to be on the podcast. And my Facebook, but you didn't know about the podcast, so I knew it wasn't coming from you. I just giggled because the same week, several people got in touch that I hadn't heard from for ages. I knew it was being orchestrated and organized by the kids in the spirit world. And there was no way that she was going to miss out. She wasn't going to be on the podcast. But you're giving me goosebumps when you say dragon. I didn't know the dragon association with her. And although I know quite a few details from what she shared with me, and since we've seen each other in London, if you look at my Facebook page, there are several messages that are all about dragons, which is
Oh,
giving me
uh,
goosebumps. Maybe they've been channeled especially for you. So there's like a connection there. But the dragon is a very sort of mythical creature, but it's also, we think of St. George and slaying the dragon, but it's also about the Kundalini sign of ascension as well. It's the fact that she's drawn it on the calendar that's kind of giving me goosebumps, Marie.
Yeah. And that really, for me, I think that was the gateway to be all in on this discovery
That
of
give you,
where she is.
yeah, did that give you comfort out of interest? Because these little aha moments of like, hang on a minute, that's a crazy conversation we had. It's almost precognitive, isn't it? It's like, hang on a
Yes.
minute, 2 weeks before this happened, we have this very profound conversation. Then when we check her diary, she's actually drawn and illustrated on forward dates, the exact dates that she's ill. And she's giving symbolic reference to transcending or kind of moving into flight, which is really interesting, isn't it? Because when the astral body leaves the human body, we take flight. We're free to move in different ways than we do on the earth plane, because we are always spirit having a human incarnation. So the body is just housing part of our spirit, if you will, or soul for this experience. Wow, that's amazing. And then where did it journey from there? I mean, I don't want to say that I presume that your grief was still immense, but did it reduce suffering in some way, or did it actually just give you a curiosity?
I think there is, to be perfectly honest, is nothing that allows you to escape that grief, and that heavy grief in that first, I'm going to say, realistically 2 years of not knowing, because you just haven't had that experience. So you don't know if it's going to change, how it's going to change. But it did give me the curiosity, like you said. That is what helped me on the darkest days. If I was really not able to get out of bed, I would just maybe listen to something that you had said on a podcast, or somebody else had put on Helping Parents Heal, or there was a Past Lives podcast that I would listen to as well. And just that's what I would, for an hour or two, it would be my life raft to sort of bring me back to be able to, even if it was just get up and do one more dish, or, something like that, or clean some clothes.
So you use the material to raise your vibration. You actually use the material to snap you out of that moment. How interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And she was amazing with her signs as well. So that always, in the deepest times, that those sorts of things were definitely life rafts that gave me, a little bit of space in between the waves of that grief. So you can just have, you can breathe, and it becomes a little bit longer in between the waves as time goes on.
Amazing. That's amazing. I presume you got a few dragon signs along the way, did you?
Yes, definitely. Sorry, I'm just moving this because it's just so bright here.
Yeah, the sun's shining in Australia.
Yes, we did. We got some dragon signs. I'm just trying to think of early on. There's been so many, and I really recommend to people to write them down in a book, because over that journey, there's so many, and you start to understand there's a language to it, and there's things for different signs for different things. I think, sometimes it was birds, other times it was through songs. Sometimes I would just say to her, if there's anything that you've got to tell me, I'm just going to shuffle my phone, and whatever song comes on from none in my playlist, and it would always just speak to exactly how I was feeling at the time and sort of give me an answer. So it was using, those really subtle forms of communication. And over time, I think after I practiced that and believed in it and wrote it down, there were times where I could just hear a sentence or things like that in my mind. And it did take me a long time to trust that. But yeah, often it would be backed up with a little bit of fact, because she knows that I wouldn't just believe, I need some evidence.
How did we end up meeting, Maria? Tell me your story of how you found me.
Yeah, so I think the first time was on HPH, and then I thought, I really just, your energy. It's like, yeah, that's energy. She's just so open and she's so lovely, and I just felt comfortable to book a reading with you. I did that, and the reading that you gave me was incredible, actually. There was a piece in the reading, a couple of pieces that really stood out for me, and one in particular was you actually pinpointed where, and I know you probably don't remember because it's all like just coming through you. You wouldn't remember the details.
I'm looking blankly at you, but I'm thinking, okay, let me in on the secret.
That's it. So we had gone to a holiday house and for the holidays, but it was actually quite close to our house. And I didn't tell you, obviously, any of that. And I was just sitting in the bedroom of the holiday house, and you really you described what the house looked like. And you had said to me, Sienna's telling me that she went to school camp just down the road. And she had only been on one school camp, and that was exactly where she went on school camp. It was just down the road. And you said that there was a ranger there, which is exactly right, So they're in the scrub, and I could believe it because I knew that you had that connection, but that was just the validation. I really needed that evidence because I think sometimes people, I think, have the view that parents who have lost their children might be open to anything, but actually I found it quite the opposite. They really are quite evidence-based. And when you have a reading like the one I had with you with that really just helps you to solidify some of the other things that you've heard or felt or seen to go, they were her trying to communicate and things like that. Yeah, so that was really incredible.
Signs and synchronicities that have happened, it's very useful because there is that element of self-doubt. And so almost I'm witnessing your signs and synchronicities through the communication that she's saying, this really did happen. I did try to do that. I did play this song. I did send that bird. And the timings of day of when it is and where it was and what the bird did, there's so much more detail. I know that some of these signs, people that might be more skeptical might be saying, well, everybody gets feathers or everybody sees a bird. But it's not. It's the behavior of the bird, where it was positioned, how it acted, timing of the day, what you were thinking at the time. And
yes.
Bird responded to you in that way, because what's happening in those moments is that the spirit person is blending their energy and consciousness with that being to influence it. It's not happening in error or mistake. And I've seen it happen so many times to me, where I remember when the kids of the spirit world were in France and they were trying to teach me about signs and synchronicity. And this one day they were laughing and I got the impression that the angels were playing with them as well, because I'd hear the word turn around and then suddenly a white feather would drift or look over here and there'd be a double number. And they were just trying to throw as many signs at me to show me the variety of signs that they can use, to the point where about an hour later, I was just picking up with laughter because I was like, how many are you going to squeeze into the hour?
Yes.
You're playing. And I'm trying to respond and get the photographs as fast as I can, And so to me, it's kind of humorous because I can see that there's a real effort made by them. And it takes a lot of energy, and they often have to work as groups, not just individuals. They're really harnessing the energy and really focusing to make that blend of energy happen and that response happen for us, which is really, really powerful. What would you say to a parent, though, or anybody that's out there, because it's not just parents that are tuning into the podcast, that don't experience signs, Marie? Are there any tips on kind of what helped you recognize or kind of feel that synchronicity? Because Sienna was very good, but I know that you work like I do with many people that will come and say, I didn't get any signs. I don't see them. I don't understand what you're talking about. What would you say to somebody that's having that kind of experience, Marie?
There's a few things that I would say. One is, I think being quiet and being in nature is very helpful to connect with those signs. I often find that when I'm busy and when I'm in, my working mind, or when I'm thinking about what to do during the day and it's harder somehow for the energy to blend. And I can see that, I can feel that, because I feel that my energy is quite buzzy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're more focused. You're focused on something, so your attention is so concentrated on what you're doing. It's harder for them to get your attention or access your mind.
Yeah, but when I'm like daydreaming or doing the dishes and thinking, or driving the car, or out in nature just sitting, or even meditating, that is much easier for her to sort of bring her point across, I think. So I would say, yeah, that's probably one of my top tips. The other one is to read, and this is interesting because I'm in a book club with a group of women who they haven't lost children, but it's sort of like a spiritual self-exploration book club. And a lot of them have had quite a profound shift in the way that they see signs by reading Laura Lynn Jackson's book called Signs. She writes it in like a very user-friendly way.
Amazing. So what I take from that two things. When you're in nature and when you're driving, you're going into meditative states. You're going into slightly altered states of reality. So the moment that we get repetitive eye signal, if with the passenger in the car or we're on the train and we're staring out the window, we go into these daydream moments, these in between the states of alpha brain waves, and you know, we move and shift from the beta and delta brainwaves into these different brainwaves, theta and alpha. And so we're able to access that information or be more in tune. So that's quite interesting when you state that, because you're actually not thinking of that consciously. Secondly, in terms of the book by Laura L. Jackson, who I am aware of, you can see there that there's an initiation by sowing the seed, very much like the trip to France that the kids put me on. By sowing the seeds and educating you as to what to look for, you're identifying these signs quicker. And it's told in such a way that it feels comforting to you. And therefore, on an energetic level, it's created a resonance. So straight away, you feel an intimacy or a connection. And that connection has many, many levels, a little bit like the Seven Dials where we met in Covent Garden. So we had a really funny moment I wanted to share with the viewers. When you contacted me after not hearing from you for a couple of years, because you've managed to go on your journey, you've moved house, you've set up a vineyard and been doing all sorts of different things that I didn't know about. I was actually in the Seven Dials in Covent Garden, which is rumoured to be a place where lowlands connect. It's actually an area where there is a sundial in the centre, and it's laid out in the form of a star, 7 roads convene in one location. It's kind of a really magical area. It's a very artistic zone, isn't there? There's lots of shops, boutiques, theatres. It's a really lovely area of tourism in central London in Covent Garden. But I didn't know that it was the first place that you landed when you came to London, and that your vineyard and your wine is actually called the Seven Dials and been named after Covent Garden. So when you text me and I said, I'm actually in Covent Garden, I'm at the Seven Dials, why don't we meet here? And you were like, oh, tell everybody your connection to Covent Garden, because it's kind of really unique. And it was, for me, it's a special place because it's where I got one of my first readings that led me on this journey. So it's a very mystical place for me, and something that I always get goosebumps when I go there. It's very special to me.
I actually went over to London on a working holiday when I was 20, and I went on my own, and I met a friend over there in the hostel, as you do when you're 20. And we had been interviewing for a job in Trafalgar Square, and both of us didn't really feel interested in it. We just thought, I don't know about that. As we were trying to get back to our hostel, we got lost, and we had gone down Monmouth Street, which is just off of where that Seven Dials area
Which is where
was.
we met, isn't it?
So we were walking down there, and I saw all these tea light candles in the window, and I said to her, this is the kind of place that I imagined, I would work at when I moved to London. And she goes, we've got our resumes, let's just go in. So we did, and they had 2 jobs available, and they said, can you interview straight away? Yeah, sure. And I remember the doors opening into the restaurant, and there was a bartender standing there, and I thought, he's good looking. And he turned out to be my husband, Matt. So we met there. That's where we met. And actually, interestingly, we sort of, took a little while to get together, as these things do, take a little while to happen. But before I left to come to Australia, I was coming back to Adelaide, and Matt was coming back to Brisbane. So we didn't really know if we were going to see each other again. And so I thought I'll go for a reading, which is the same place that you went, in Neil's yard. Yeah, and that was one of my first readings. I had 1 or 2 before that, but that was in London, was my only reading. And the psychic there said, the guy that you're with now, you're going to get married, and there is a female spirit who is just waiting to come. Shoot, that's Sienna. Yeah, so that all played out. We ended up moving states and all the things, and I lived in Brisbane for a while, but that's how we met. So that obviously played such a special place in our heart. And Matt decided he was going to start his own wine brand down here in South Australia. And when he did, he thought, let's go back to where it all began, which was Seven Dials, because that's where we used to meet after work. And so we called the wine Seven Dials, and he used to go out onto, the vineyards to check the grapes, and he would take Sienna with him. And that was for his first vintage. And sadly, she passed before the wine was made. So we ended up calling that wine the brand is Seven Dials, and we called that the Seer, like Seer, because of her ability to see into the future and also know, about her passing, and because that was her nickname, Seer, because she was Sienna. So yeah, so it was amazing to me that you were in that spot when I just knew if we went to the UK, I had to get this reading for Matt for his birthday with you. And the timing was just insane.
It was just incredible, wasn't it? And we met on the 11th as well of the 1st, which is 111, which, everything was just magical. The location that we'd met in, and it was all connected. And my first reading was in Covent Garden that actually led me on this journey. I'd had a couple of experiences at home, in fairness, but I had booked a reading for somebody else, actually, and that person couldn't make it. And I ended up having to take their slot. And it was really profound. And I remember the woman saying to me, "You've got a blockage of energy in your lower back and you need to go see an osteopath." I was laughing to myself, thinking, I can't go to an osteopath saying the psychic or the medium sent me saying I've got I don't feel any pain or discomfort. Anyway, it'd be really bizarre. A few weeks later, I would go for, I would actually been given a series of massages, and on the last one, the guy who'd actually been treating me had his car broke down. So we get these strange inspired connections or synchronicities. And they asked me if I wanted to wait 3 months for the next available slot with him. Did I want to take a locum and somebody that was available? And I sort of, after the diving accident, needed to get the tension out of my body. Job, I wanted to kind of keep the flow of everything going. So I had this massage, and from the minute I walked in with this guy, I thought, this I feel like I know him, even though I've never met him before. And he was only a young lad, and everything he said, we had a correspondence to. So I said, my grandfather was farmer, and he was like, oh, my grandfather was farmer. He said, I've just got back from India. I was like, I just got back from India. It's like moments like that constantly. And I turned over, and then what was really amazing, Marie, was he said, you've got a blockage of energy in your lower back. And I was like, this moment of this woman saying this in this meeting suddenly went spirals back. It's funny how some things fit into place to a reading, isn't it? And then he said, and you had a diving accident. I thought, nobody in this location knows I've had a diving accident. And I was like, excuse me, run that past me again? Because at the time I wasn't spiritual in the way that I was now. I was very confused. I was a little bit sort of anxious, like, is this guy reading my mind? Like, how's he getting this information? And he said, oh, I can just see it. And I was like, why can you see it? Do I have labels saying diving accident? Working here? And I suddenly was like, no, there's something, I thought there was something strange going on. There's something happening. But of course, he was very innocent in all of this. The spirit world were playing with us. They were trying to use our curiosity and our enthusiasm to spur this conversation and open up my mind to alternative things or different opportunities. And they used him as a conduit for that, and probably very innocently. He was very enthusiastic about his ability to heal. He did an incredible job, but he was the person that opened me up to spirit. We've got something that in common, Marie, in that my experience then led to past life flashbacks. So when I had my awakening, I saw certain things, and when I researched them, I found them to be factually correct. You've also gone down the hypnosis route. Tell everybody a little bit about your story and how that came to be and what you've discovered, and tell them some of the strange stories that you shared with me in Covent Garden about the work. Well, I found these little moments. Wow, that's really, really cool.
Yeah, okay. So I think the first, what had happened is I was, I think, working in a job that wasn't quite aligned with where I was at that time. And I started to get quite anxious, and I had quite a bit of fear and anxiety that just felt really out of place. Like, I just was like, where did this come from? And I did have a gut sense that it was trying to move me to the next thing, that I was meant to be going, like, you've been here for too long, like, you're staying in this spot for too long. Anyway, so in order to sort of move the anxiety, I had read in a ad that there was a lady who was doing this past life regression, and it could help you heal fear or anxiety for specific fears. And I did have a specific fear at the time. So I thought, I will go and see what this is all about. Anyway, I sat on the couch, I laid down on the couch, and it was I'm pretty open to these sorts of things. So I was a little bit apprehensive. It made me a little bit nervous, and I was thinking to myself, is she going to make me whacked like a duck or something under hypnosis. But, she reassured me that it was kind of like being in a dream state. And I went under, just by the sound of her voice and going backwards and through the hypnotic process. And in that life, I went through that fear, and my fear was of Alzheimer's. And I went through a life where I had that, had that experience. And I think, you can kind of go, oh, well, maybe because you had that fear, of course, you went back into that life, and that's why you had that experience. But it was kind of what happened after that to me that was more interesting, because hypnotherapist took me to the death point. And after that death point, I went up to this space, which was completely white energy. And I call that the space in between, sort of with no time and space. And in that space, I was kind of speaking to my guides about, and remember, this is not the person saying it. This is all coming from me out of my mouth in hypnosis, which is what I find the best part of this, is that it's coming from the person, under hypnosis. And I was saying, the point of this life, because one of the aspects of that life was that, my daughter that was with me at the time I was looking after her. I was a nanny in that life for her. And in that space, they said, she's come back and she had asked to be your child, flesh and blood in this life. And that's your agreement with her. And your agreement with your other daughter is that you've had other lives with her, but in this life, you just have to show her unconditional love. That's the only thing you need to do. And that is your agreement, with her. And they said to me, and this is what came out of my mouth, in 5 years' time, everything's going to change. So what you need to do is you need to leave where you are now. You've got 5 years to choose a business, any business, but you need to be at home around your children. And once that 5 years is up, that's when the real work is going to begin. And I was like, okay, this is interesting, but also you don't have to ask me twice. So I did quit my job and I started my own business, and pretty well around about 5 years to that day is when Sienna passed away. And yeah, I'm so grateful that I had listened to that and I had quieted my mind enough to get that message through directly to me.
So again, another precognitive indication that it's soul planned.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, that is exactly how that sort of played out. And I did spend that extra time in those 5 years really being consciously aware of our relationships in that moment with both of my daughters, and really drinking it in for those 5 years.
I've also had many past life regressions. And the thing that really alarmed me, because I've been in India, and again, these inspired connections, a lady who was a supplier of mine thrust this book into my hand and said, "It's for you." I was like, "What is it?" And he said, "Many Masters, Many Lives." It's Dr. Brian Wise, who is a renowned psychiatrist who turned, into clinical hypnotherapy and then became a past life therapist, and has written many amazing books. Actually, Many Masters, Many Lives is just one of my favorite. There are many authors out there who've got great books that I can share, some of which are on my website if you want to have a look at them in the book section. But what I'd say is that book had a really profound impact on me. The fact that I didn't choose it, it was given to me. Kept curiously looking at it, thinking, do I need to read it? Do I not? And I felt drawn to read it. Then I read it and I'm like, oh, wow. But I've got this kind of naive feeling that, you're going to meet your soulmate. You're going to find out who the people are that are around you in other lives and incarnations. So I go along, I find this group hypnosis session. So my first experience was in a group, which perhaps was a little bit naive as well. Maybe I needed to be in a one-to-one scenario, which I did after this event. I did it the wrong way around. And as I walk in, I don't want to sit next to the people that I'm directed at, but I'm so English, I feel rude. I can't go back to the chair that's open at the door. And I felt really weird about the fact that I felt repelled from sitting in the only seat that was remaining. And the woman who was taking the group sort of smiled and laughed at me, and she said, "Oh, you don't want to sit there?" She said, "How interesting." She went, "Don't worry, we're all going to move seats in a moment. Anyway, we're only going to be sat there for a few minutes, but maybe we'll explore why that is a little bit later on." And so the energy was already reacting and talking, Maria. It was so fascinating. And the story that came out was really amazing. It did turn out that in another life, people were my nemesis in some way. And so my soul recognized that memory. And actually, that was something that we'd come to heal. We'd come to release one of those individuals from the karma connected to that situation. So when we're doing past life regression, so much more going on, and on an energetic level, we're releasing blocks, releasing karma. And I don't believe karma is punishment. I believe it's about just a rebalancing of energies. And in that lifetime, that lady, she'd actually done something that ended in me dying tragically. But it was it was an accident. It was somebody had put her up to it. And in this life, she was struggling with confidence, using her intuition incorrectly, and it causing harm. She then had lost confidence in this lifetime. So some of the traits or personality traits that we think we have come from different places. It was very, very fascinating. The whole day was fascinating. I have to do on a different thing. We'll have an insight and deep dive, the two of us, maybe into some of our own experiences, because you do therapy work. And so if people wanted to come to you, I've done a lot of research into it. I do it too. It's not my full vocation, and I think it's a really fascinating thing. But one of the things that really impressed me the most, Maria, I don't know if you found this from your experience, because I think you've got to try these things and make your own decision about them, and was the emotion. So the first moment, here I am expecting that I'm going to this lovely meeting with my soulmate. And what I actually had was the woman, there was 20 people in the room, and it was me and the lady directly opposite me. We were sobbing our hearts out. And when I say sobbing my hearts out, I'd walked in that room very happy, excited about the day, and I was literally sobbing like I was a newborn baby. I was literally crying, like my whole heart was bleeding. It was a profound reaction. When I was shaking as well. And when the woman came to speak to me, I couldn't actually speak. I couldn't get the words out, which everybody that knows me knows that is not me. You know, I'm somebody that can get my words out even in the most profound of situations. And so that to me left this sort of resonance of there's something else going on there, because why would my body react that way? Why would I have such strong emotions to such a small clip of memory? And what it was is that was a traumatic situation that happened, and I was releasing that energy that I hadn't had the chance to release. And when we release energy, it can be through laughter, it could be through crying, it could be through gargling or burping through the body. We see this all the time when we're healing people or working with people in a therapeutic situation. The body has different ways of releasing tension. And some of that tension is coming from the energetic body, not the physical body, is what I am starting to realize. And when I went to do research, so I was really fortunate to actually meet one of the professors at the Virginia University who had worked and was a close friend of Dr. Ian Stevenson's, who was one of the professors who really did a lot of research into past life regression. And so I studied, as a result of meeting her and having an experience with Ian on the other side, I started researching his work and really deep delving. And one of the things that he revealed was that actually the strength of emotion that people would express and the power of uncontrollable and undeniable personality traits and emotions connected to their experience. It wasn't just the information that they were giving that was very accurate, and the stories that they were portraying that they couldn't have known the full details of. They have, often Ian researched children because he felt that they would be less influenced by the human mind, and because we're exposed to TV and all these kind of things. And so I found it really fascinating, Maria. My whole thing was like, wow, there's definitely something going on. Do you agree? Have you had a similar experience?
Absolutely.
I had a lady who she'd been a spy in I think it was Second World War, or it could have been the First World War. And she was tortured in that situation when she got captured. And the way that they did it is they did things to her fingers and toes. Now, she was under hypnosis. She doesn't recall it all. And I said to her when she came out, can I ask you something? Have you always had problems with your fingers and toes in this lifetime? And she said, I have. How do you know? Because she can't recall everything. Of course, we record it and give them the notes and details and everything so that they've got a record of it. But it was fascinating, the story that she then went on to portray about the problems that she'd had with her fingers and toes. And I said, the feeling that you're not going to have those experiences going forward, because it's clearly an energetic trace from what is a memory, that's residual memory that's coming through or filtering through from your last lifetime. And interestingly enough, she found that the hypnosis did make a shift in that physical ailment. So I sort of say, skeptical we might be. And again, absolutely, we put in sort of therapeutic processes to protect people so that you don't experience anything negative after the hypnosis session. But real, imagined or metaphor, it really doesn't matter if it creates a shift in emotions or physical being. I think it makes a difference. But what I love about your work, Marie, is that when you've walked through somebody else's footsteps in a way, you realize that you are going to be reborn on the planet. You might then think differently about how you want to treat the planet because you're going to be spending more time there. It's not I'm just here and I'm exiting, but also you're wanting to think about the imprint that you leave on other people because you're going to meet them again. And you may tread in their shoes in another incarnation. And that loving kindness that you express to somebody, what we give out, so do we receive in certain ways. I really do believe that there are moments where we're shown different angles of our own personality, if you will, through the eyes of another person. I think past life regression for me, I don't know if you found this, Marie, softened my soul or changed me in some way dramatically. I remember after this group session, even though I cried, and I did cry for about 3 weeks, and for me, Marie, it's slightly different. I believe that was important, a cleansing or sort of purging, if you will, of my soul, of this energy. And I think I needed that experience to understand how serious you need to take past life regression a little bit more because, there's going to be people with different belief systems. I didn't have the belief in past life regression. I didn't believe in past lives at the time that I was experiencing. I was just curious. But what I came away with is I was really shaken that this feels really tangible and really feasible. And there's definitely something else going on. As to whether I can say 100% definitely sure, I'm not sure, but I've had regressions like you where I have been able to get factual information from the person that's very unusual, research it, check it out, and find it absolutely did exist in the exact years that they said, in the exact places, the exact things. Different readings are going to be different. Some people give very vague memories, don't they? Some people give very detailed memories depending on how open they are to the process and how much fear is present. In that purging, what I would say is in that purging of the soul, nothing negative happened to me. After that period, I felt a lot lighter. Things didn't seem to worry me or concern me, perhaps because I realized that life was eternal and the soul lived on. I didn't have a fear of death like I had prior to that. So many things softened in my soul from that experience. I've even had the same conversations with somebody living that I've had in another incarnation. In fact, when I found out and Spirit did the reveal, I was like, oh, goosebumps. We got the chance to have the same conversation but make different decisions. So we're definitely rehearsing or trying out that role again to see if we would act differently with our new knowledge or experience or growth, which I found, which I was really grateful for, actually. That really was a huge insight to me, is that, look, we're going to reinteract these things until we get the chance to get it right. So we don't have to put time pressures on ourselves. We'll learn at the right time that's meant for us, the right way. There's divine timing to everything. But it's a really beautiful subject matter. People contact you, Marie, if they want to have this experience and they want to work with you as a therapist. How can they contact you, my darling? I'll put the details summary on the podcast as well so people can locate it. That'd be fantastic. Amazing, amazing. I think that's really important as well when people are researching the therapist that they go to understand the qualifications and the background that those people have. You and I both come from a very loving space. We've done a lot of clinical hypnotherapy work. We've done a lot of healing work. We've done a lot of time working with the grieving on a voluntary basis and learning about the community and understanding the different processes and experiences that people have, which are vast. And so I think we're well coached in those kinds of levels of understanding and therefore can have the sensitivity that's required to kind of make a loving space and to make it very healing, caring for the people and individuals to remove that fear and those blocks sometimes to these kind of processes. So I think that's amazing. My gosh, it's been a pleasure, Marie, to have you on. And I know that we're going to talk more and that there'll be other things that, come away that we'll have to have a session where we talk more in detail about some of the things that we've had. We've got lots of things in familiar and similarities and kind of lots of experience that are different. One thing that really sort of stood out for me in today's conversation is the fact that you actually got precognitive information prior to that situation. I've seen in one or two situations as well where people can't remember, when they've had trauma or they can't remember certain memories about loved ones or individuals, which is quite useful for the grief community. And there was a lady who couldn't remember the childhood memory of a lady that was lost in a sudden incident, and through hypnosis was able to regain those memories, which were really important to her because she had lost that memory. So regression doesn't always have to be regression into past life. It can be to remember loved memories that she blocked out because of the pain of the loss at that age several decades before. Now she was more mature and able to cope with those issues and memories, had more experience in life. The soul unlocked them for her and she could remember them in Technicolor. And what was very beautiful is something that she recalled from that memory, a gift she was given. She then actually received in the physical. She was able to mention it to her parents. I think it was her father's 70th that he found the item that the lady had given her that connected her to that love. And so there's lots of things that hypnotherapy can do. And as well, in terms of the clinical hypnotherapy, it can help with insomnia, attacks, depression, all sorts of different things. If you are trained in it, it can open up a very healing route. The reason I sort of say this to the people who don't know me so well or my background is the reason that I think clinical hypnotherapy in every guise is so powerful is that when I had the diving accident, I experienced post-traumatic stress disorder, so I understand it inside out. I've experienced it. I know what it's like. I know some of the quirks that happen as a result of it. I do believe that was part of my soul plan to understand it thoroughly. And I taught myself all the different holistic healing techniques that can bring you back into resonance in the body and to settle those strange emotions that you have in those and experiences that you have that you don't have in normal life when you experience that level of stress. One of the most effective things was clinical hypnotherapy. CBT psychotherapy was very good, but hypnotherapy in one session stopped the trauma. And I found that kind of really unbelievable, Marie. I couldn't believe that how in 6 months of trying other things, hypnosis could work so quickly. And that was my fascination long before I ever thought I'd work in this guise or ever utilize it. In fact, I never thought I would. I thought I was just doing it for self-exploration to understand. I want to understand why the brain works that way and why certain situations create that opportunity that I struggled with through different therapy techniques. And so the one thing about your work and my work as well, Marie, is that it can instantly heal somebody very, very quickly. And something that has been a constant sort of niggle in somebody's life can change instantly. I mean, the value of that is incredible, isn't it? It's massive. I remember a lady came to me for soul reading and I said, oh, you had these past life. And I wouldn't know that in this life, you still collect the tea sets that were so precious to you in that life. And I believe that you've got a whole collection of tea sets that connect to, and she was, living in a different location. She was interested in her westernized style was very different to the Japanese. There was no indication from the lady of how she looked that she had an interest in Japan. And then they talked about different things that she had that were Japanese in her house and how they connected to her past incarnations. So this little thread showing up and showing the validations as to why they wanted to raise that incarnation, why it was important, because it was so beloved a past life to her that she was still incorporating the threads of it in this lifetime. And I think that's really beautiful when you realize your full story. It's a real story of self-exploration because you understand other things about yourself, why you've got certain passions or maybe why you're a protege. There's so many examples in the research that I've done of people that are extremely artistic. And you think, how did they just get born like that? And you realize, no, they have all incarnations like that. It's secondhand to them, And so you realize that these little threads, they're really happy threads as well. They're not always connected to trauma or negative situations. Quite often they are. I remember a lady that came to me who just was passionate about Scandinavia. She'd never been, she couldn't understand it, but she'd had this incredible life in Scandinavia, and suddenly she realized why she loved all the things she did and why she was always sotted with Scandinavian things. So I find it really fascinating. The soul's just fascinating, isn't it, Marie? It's fascinating. There's so many guys. You never stop learning because people are so unique and individual. So that's incredible. Well, thank you for coming on. It's amazing. I'm so proud that Sienna sent you. Love to Matt. And I can't wait to meet again and have conversations and everything. And I will certainly put your details on the site so that everybody can find you. Take care. Have a lovely day, my darling. See you soon.